They say never mess with a man's land, especially if that land's been in his family for generations. Well, someone should have told the HOA from Whispering Pines Estates, because what they did to me crossed the line. Not just morally, not just legally. They put my life in danger. Let me tell you what happened. How a feud over fences and flowers turned into a war of rights, revenge, and spike strips. I'm Eli Carter, 43, born and raised on a 12-acre spread just outside the town of Millridge. My folks built the house in '76, raised cattle, grew our own vegetables. You could hear owls at night and nothing else. When they passed, the house became mine. I moved back in 5 years ago, looking to slow down and reconnect with the place that built me. But what I didn't know, what nobody warned me about, was that while I was gone, Whispering Pines was built right up against our northern boundary. A gated community, pristine hedges, cookie-cutter McMansions, and worst of all, an HOA run by people with more ego than sense. That's when the letters started. At first, I thought it was spam. I found a typed note in my mailbox about grass length guidelines and how my exterior color palette failed to meet subdivision aesthetics. I laughed, actually laughed out loud, because my land wasn't part of their HOA. Never had been. I had the deed, the survey maps, everything. So I ignored it. But the letters kept coming. Warnings, fines, even threats of liens on shared boundary access. They said my gravel road, which I'd maintained myself for years, was considered a community pathway. That's funny, because I was the only one who used it. I called the HOA's office line and tried to explain. I'm not under your jurisdiction, I said. I didn't sign anything. I don't pay dues. I'm not even behind your gates. The woman on the other end, Linda, I later learned, talked to me like I was some defiant teenager. Mr. Carter, we reserve the right to ensure the community remains visually cohesive. I told her to lose my number. She didn't. The next week, a man in a security uniform knocked on my door. Routine patrol, he said. For what? I asked. This area has been flagged for ordnance checks. I shut the door on him. Then they got sneakier. 2 months later, I noticed that the signs at the edge of my driveway had been replaced. Where it used to say private road, no trespassing, there was now a shiny new plaque. Community speed monitored, HOA Zone 2. Zone 2? Of what? I ripped the sign out and called my lawyer. She assured me they couldn't just absorb my land without legal paperwork. We set a cease and desist. But then came the spike strips. It was early. I was heading to the farmer's market to sell eggs, honey, and the last batch of tomatoes. As I eased down the gravel path, coffee in hand, I felt a pop. Then another. Then my truck sank hard to the left. Hissing rubber. Grinding metal. I climbed out and saw both left tires slashed. Sidewall shredded by steel spike strips laid just inside the bend of my own driveway. Bright yellow. Factory grade. Just like the ones used by police. At first, I thought maybe it was a prank. But then I saw the small sign staked next to it. Installed by Whispering Pines HOA Security. Private Enforcement Patrol. I stared at it, stunned. They installed law enforcement-grade equipment on a road I own to stop me from driving my own vehicle. I nearly lost it. I had the strips removed, towed my truck, and called the county sheriff. When they arrived, the deputy's mouth hung open. "They did this on your land?" he asked. "Sure did. With a sign to brag about it. This isn't just trespassing," he said. "This could count as reckless endangerment. Even attempted property damage. You think?" He photographed the scene. "Filed a report. Said the DA might get involved. I hoped they would. But that wasn't enough for me. I wanted blood. You see, the HOA thought I was just some loner farmer with no fight in him. But I wasn't just a property owner. I was a land surveyor by trade before I went full-time into homesteading. I knew boundaries. Legally, physically, politically. So I gathered every piece of documentation I had. Title, satellite imagery, utility records, GPS-marked photos. I even had a signed boundary agreement from the 80s when my father granted a right-of-way to a now-defunct logging company. I filed a civil suit. $65,000 in damages for vehicle repair, trespassing, false signage, and reckless endangerment. The HOA responded with arrogance. Their lawyer, some guy with gelled hair and a gold watch, claimed my easement had expired and the road fell under community purview. I dropped the aerial maps on the table, circled in red ink. Nope. My road. My land. My rules. The court date finally arrived. The room smelled like old wood and stale coffee. The HOA board sat on one side, Linda included, tight blazer and tighter expression. I sat across from them, calm but boiling underneath. The judge looked over the documents for 30 minutes before even letting the HOA speak. He looked at them and said, "You installed spike strips on a road that doesn't belong to you." Linda started to object. The judge raised a hand. "I don't want your interpretation. I want your deed. Show me where your authority extends." They had nothing. When it was my turn, I played the dashcam footage from my truck. It showed the spike strips just as I turned the corner. Then I played audio of the HOA's security guard from my doorbell cam admitting the patrol was part of a standard HOA measure. The judge didn't just rule in my favor. He scolded them. "This was an outrageous breach of property rights," he said. "Mr. Carter is owed restitution, and your HOA needs a serious policy review." They were ordered to pay $48,000 in damages, plus attorney fees. And just for fun, the judge granted me the right to install my own signage at the road entrance. I chose a bright, custom-made steel sign that reads, "Private property. Not part of Whispering Pines. Trespassers will be towed and shamed publicly." It's been quiet since. The letter stopped. Linda resigned, apparently citing hostile rural conditions. The road's back to its peaceful self. Just trees, gravel, and the sound of boots walking in the morning dew. Sometimes I slowed down when I reached the spot where the spike strips once sat. Not out of fear. Out of victory. Because you don't mess with a man's land. Not here. Not ever.